Joining me now for more is Brian Castner from New York. He's a senior crisis advisor for Amnesty International. Brian, good to have you on the show. Tell us more, a little bit about more background information about this conflict in Cabo Delgado.
So Cabo Delgado, one of the poorest regions of Mozambique in the far north of the country, has what some call the resource curse. There's rubies, there's liquid natural gas. And so this insurgency that is formed is really very locally made with economic considerations and complaints. And for the last couple of years, there's been fighting going on between this insurgent group known locally as Al-Shabaab and the Mozambican security forces. But in 2020, it really ramped up significantly. The insurgents were able to take more territory. The government forces were losing a number of battles. And so they hired Dyke Advisory Group, which is a South African private military company, to conduct operations there. And our research has shown that all three of these groups have been committing war crimes in the course of this conflict.
This private militia from South Africa is very interesting. What role do you think they played in the atrocities?
So you're right. So we would call them a private military company. Some people call them mercenaries, but that's not really true under the international humanitarian law definition. They were hired to provide armed helicopters kind of as a quick reaction force for when a battle started. But they've been able to operate independently. There's not really been coordination on the ground. And so what they've been doing is really firing indiscriminately into these villages and towns, not differentiating between civilians and legitimate military targets. And in some cases, of course, the insurgents are taking cover in people's homes. The insurgents are taking cover in the hospitals. But rather than differentiate between those targets, our research shows that Dyke has basically been firing on all of them. And photographs emerged today of some of their weaponry, and they're dropping improvised bombs from these helicopters, which would explain why, for example, the hospital in Mozambique has been so damaged.
Brian, tell me this. This conflict in Mozambique is surely not on the top of the international agenda, the international community's agenda. Why do you think that is? And if this conflict doesn't stop, how bad does it spiral?
Yeah, so Cabo Delgado is often called Mozambique's forgotten cape. And you're right that this has not been the top of the agenda, whether it's because of COVID or because of fighting the Islamic states in other parts of the world. But there really is a danger here for this conflict to spill out. It is a local conflict, but the insurgent group has pledged loyalty to the Islamic State. And there is, not to mention the fact that there's 500,000 people displaced and the UN says 1 million facing severe food shortage. It's bad for the people there, but it could be bad for the whole region.
What do you think the government policy is lacking?
I think it's mostly lacking transparency. They are not allowing outside groups in. Reporting for journalists from the area is extremely hard. Another reason that the conflict is underreported. The government is denying that their troops are committing executions and torture and sexual violence. There's just so much we don't know about this conflict. It's hard to know what the right solution is for humanitarian groups and the international community when so little is known. So one of our goals on this report was simply to shed light on the conflict generally, because we've heard from so many international NGOs and journalists that really, it's simply a black hole of information of what is happening there.
All right. Brian Castner, live for us from New York. Thank you very much. I do appreciate your time and the analysis.
Thank you so much.